The truth matters, but only when you actually see it. And if you were watching Fox News this week, whether it was in the morning or at night, you would think that the media and the Democrats are happy about the coronavirus. Please watch this.
Watching the media coverage today, it seemed like some of the Trump haters were actually relishing in this moment.
Tonight, I can report the sky is absolutely falling. We are all doomed. The end is near. The apocalypse is imminent, and you're going to all die, all of you, in the next 48 hours, and it's all President Trump's fault. Or at least that's what the media mob and the Democratic extreme radical socialist party.
Watch the media. You start to feel like they're rooting for coronavirus to spread.
I have no idea what any of those people are talking about. So let's bring in Dylan Byers. He's NBC News senior media reporter and host of the brand new podcast, Byers Market, where his debut episode with Sheryl Sandberg just dropped. I highly recommend it. And Dr. Matt McCarthy back with me. Dr. McCarthy, the media can be alarmist about certain things, but let's talk about this one. Fox News says that Democrats and the media are blowing this thing out of proportion. You're not a member of either. What do you think?
That's right. I don't come here as a Democrat or Republican. I come here as a doctor who thinks about infections every single day, not just when there's a pandemic like this. This is something to be worried about, and we need to be vigilant, and this is happening at a time when government experts are being stifled. And what I want to say to the coronavirus task force is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are three things that you have to focus on. These are the three priorities. Number one, drug shortages. You need to be meeting right now to figure out how you're going to get Americans their drugs. Number two is testing. We have to roll out widespread testing. We still don't know who has this virus. And number three is freedom. We have to give experts the freedom to stand at a podium and tell us what's really going on. DTF, drug shortages, testing, and freedom. If you meet today, you need to focus on these three things. Don't tell us about vaccines. Don't tell us about clinical trials. Fix these three problems right now, and that's going to bring a lot of certainty to the process.
But please don't look up DTF on the internet, because you're not going to find that. Dylan, what's your reaction to this narrative from conservative media?
Well, look, two things. First of all, on the one hand, the sort of unwavering loyalty that conservative media like Fox News, Talk Radio has to this president in the White House is very familiar. Their willingness to attack the media, whether it be mainstream media, about anything that seems even remotely critical of the president is also something that is extremely familiar. However, when you are talking about something where there is a public health emergency, if it were a natural disaster, anything where public safety is in question, especially something where you have a group like the CDC coming out and saying this could be bad, we need to get ready to prepare for a scenario in which schools are shutting down, in which people have to work from home, in which there's limited availability to medical services or doctors' offices, to then go out and politicize it and sort of lead your viewership at Fox News or your listeners on talk radio to believe that they have nothing to worry about because you have such a vested interest in defending this president seems to me to be getting very far into the realm of irresponsibility. We are not talking about impeachment. This is not just a question of choosing your own facts. This is a question of the safety of the American public. And so I think in that regard, it's extremely irresponsible. And now, look, I would just add very quickly to the doctor's point, sobriety, clear-eyed, level-headed reporting about what's going on with the coronavirus is essential, and I think we need as much of that as possible. And I do not think that people should be sending folks into full-blown panic mode. But the facts really matter here more than in any other scenario, and I think it's really, really important for the folks at Fox News and the folks on Talk Radio to think about that.
In your opinion, Matt, all of our responsibility, what can the media be doing better to prepare people?
Asking tough questions.
To whom?
Well, number one, Mike Pence. The buck stops with him. We've established there's a chain of command. I think Trump did the right thing by saying, here is the process. I'm putting this man in charge. We need to hold his feet to the fire and say, number one, drug shortages, medical devices. What's happening with these things?
Okay, but your average person doesn't have access
Sure.
to the task force or Mike Pence. But you know what they have access to? Social media, their Facebook feed. We already know there's so much disinformation as it relates to medicine. How do people protect themselves at a time when the situation around corona, for anyone, there are more questions than answers, and no doubt people's Facebook feeds are filled with stuff?
What I always say is I would never get my medical advice from a stockbroker. I would not go to somebody who is thinking about the stock market or thinking about viewership to get their medical advice. You want to go to medical professionals. I don't wake up every morning thinking about how the markets are going to fluctuate. I'm thinking about how do we contain this pandemic. And the key here is to get reliable information. And it's a mistake to turn into these cable news shows that try to sensationalize things. And that's the problem we have right now.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.